Hello, and welcome to the Pigskin Profits with my boy Casey Loves Money and myself, also known as Dilberto's Picks. And we are kicking off this new show, which we call Pigskin Profits, as I just mentioned, where we will be talking about NFL for the current week, a recap of the week prior, as well as what we look forward to for the upcoming week. And we're glad that you guys are all here joining us.
Welcome to the Pigskin Profit Show, brought to you by Black Book Sports, the only fan of sports betting. Are you tired of pro gamblers who lie about their picks? Black Book solves that issue. It's the first completely transparent marketplace where you can subscribe to the best cappers in the game. Or if you're an amazing sports bettor that's been struggling to grow your following, start using Black Book Sports to post your plays and see your brand begin to grow. Myself and Dilberto's Picks will be hosting guest cappers and tracking all of our plays at blackbooksports.com. So create your own account and go give us a follow.
We're waiting for a big smile out of you. You're up 2-0. What's the story? Are you not happy, or you're only half happy, or?
Still to be happy about.
You're up 2-0.
Job's not finished. Job finished? I don't think so.
Okay.
Тогда типа посчитать потери. Суммы нули погибать на сцене. Снова один, прогуляюсь без тени. Заливаю лик, поцелуй на шее. Как там?
Escaping, on the move, Mahomes stops, spins, flips it forward for the touchdown to Edwards-Helaire. Mahomes straddled the line of scrimmage, flipped it to Edwards-Helaire for the score. Stop it.
NFL Week 4.
珍珠的心理太奇
These
妙。
girls wanna tie a kid down and keep me around, but I would never change. I'm a dog, I'm a hound, but I tell them what they wanna hear. They like how it sound till I'm gone with the wind and I'm lost, never found. I met her at my show, then we smashed right after. If we go 3 rounds, then she fall in love faster. Very next morning, I'm Casper in another city for a show somewhere getting plastered. It's a disaster.
Talk week 5 of the NFL and pay for some drinks while we do it, because I know you're thirsty. Kirk Cousins at 1 o'clock. That's GOAT level Kirk. Vikings -7. Not to mention the Bears suck. Jets, money line. Our division, our time, and the takeover is now. Because we've got a quarterback that bangs MILFs. Lions +3.5. It's your time, Jared. Go beat Bill. Or cover. 49ers -6.5. Baker is still a bot. And no one on Carolina is stopping Debo Samuel. Eagles -5.5. I said I'd ride them till they stopped covering, and they haven't stopped. Also the over. Points. Bengals Ravens over 48.5. Burrow versus Lamar is an actual wet dream of mine. And Jamar has a crib call on the way. Load up the bar tab, load up the shots, and let's go have ourselves a weekend.
Off with what you felt about week 4 in the NFL?
Yeah, so I'm not easily impressed as a guy who's watched the NFL for most of his life. I will say I am very impressed by how bad the Carolina Panthers are. Organization is horrific. Baker Mayfield, when you're asking for Sam Darnold to come in off a high ankle sprain because you think he might be better than Baker Mayfield, you got some serious problems in there. And I think that for me, it's just crazy how bad Matt Rule has been. And I think it's weird that we keep seeing this trend of college coaches going into the NFL and just doing horrible. We saw with Nick Saban when he went from LSU to Miami and how that turned out. We're seeing something very similar here with Matt Rule. And I don't see the Panthers getting any better throughout the rest of the season.
I would fully agree with that statement. And the one thing that really stuck out to me, which is I found to be quite hilarious, was the fact that week 1, everyone and their mom was on the Panthers to win and cover against the Browns. Baker revenge game, all this nonsense, and they show up and I guess they didn't show up, but they show up and they go up a quick 20-7 and going into the fourth quarter, and then Baker puts on some sort of almost comeback type performance in the fourth quarter, but essentially he didn't look too great. He threw the ball 16 of 27 times, 235 yards, one touchdown and one interception, so very mediocre. And this again is week 1, but I just wanted to kick it off with that. With everyone kind of had high hopes for the Panthers, especially with Baker Mayfield. In my opinion, he kind of is the guy behind me reincarnated, but I actually would take probably Johnny Manziel over Baker Mayfield at this point. So, what? What do you say?
It's a bold statement. That's a bold statement right there. I mean,
I know it is.
Johnny
But
Manziel,
I
you
feel
got
like
less than a year.
exactly. Well, he also had less than a year of chance, and I feel like Baker Mayfield's kind of been lucky to have this long of a chance. I think he had a lot of talent on his squad when he was with the Browns, and he didn't really do much. Like they had little hopes and glimpses, but I think majority of it came from their running game, which we saw with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I think that they kind of backpacked that team. And they kind of got more publicity than they should have deserved because of the fact that they had Odell and Landry and like all these huge superstars all on one team, when essentially they were like mediocre, average. I mean, average at best. Like I didn't think too highly of them. I think Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt kind of backpacked that squad, but um, but yeah, no, I fully agree with your statement about the Panthers being probably the worst team in the league. I would say them, the Washington football team, or the Texans right now are all around the same, in my opinion. Um, but yeah,
And they're gonna get absolutely demolished, I think, this week. And that kind of goes into something that I think that you noticed this week was they played the 49ers. And the 49ers looked pretty good, didn't they? They manhandled the Rams. The Rams couldn't do anything. There might be I think the Rams have some problems here and there, but I don't think that they're big problems. But boy, the 49ers looked really good last week.
Yeah, no, they definitely did. And that was one of the things I actually saw this morning. I don't remember the stat, so don't quote me, but it was something like if the 49ers defense stays on pace, they will be the best defense ever.
Really?
Ever, in terms of how many yards they allow per play.
I think it's crazy
like,
thinking how
the Bears, like the really good Bears squad, which is it 1980s something?
85.
I don't know exactly. 85, yeah. I think they allowed like 4 yards a play, around 4 yards a play, but the 49ers are only allowing like 3.5 or 3.4 per play. So, I mean, there's still a lot of season left, so don't get me wrong. But I think that that is something that people are going to be watching out for, because if you look at all their games, the most points that they've allowed is 10 points.
That's
just kind of unreal.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And it's crazy to me because Kyle Shanahan is an offensive-minded coach, and they have this, getting rid of or when Robert Saleh took over the Jets, they thought that the defense was going to fall back apart. And they're still just an incredibly well-coached defensive team. If they could do anything on offense and maybe muster up 21, 22 points a game, they're a team to mess with. And I was always one that thought Jimmy Garoppolo is a better quarterback than people imagined. I thought it was weird to go to Trey Lance to start the season.
So did I. I thought that was very weird.
You just need Jimmy Garoppolo to be a game manager, and they'll be an 11-6 team and have a chance to win the NFC West.
Most definitely. And like you saw that, like I was worried. I didn't bet on the Rams, but I honestly thought that it would be a closer game because of the fact that the 49ers offense hasn't looked too promising, especially their run game. Like that was probably the best I've seen their run game all year with Jeff Wilson. I think that was one thing that held me back from really getting behind the 49ers, because as we know, their defense is really good. They have, according to Pro Football Focus, I think they have the #1 secondary in the league, which is surprising to me as well. I mean, not surprising, but whenever you think of the 49ers defense, you think of their linebackers and their D-line. And when really, I mean, their D-line obviously is really good, but their secondary is really coming up clutch. Like Cooper Kupp had a lot of catches, but other than that, there was not really any other players that were making a big impact for the Rams. I mean, maybe Higbee. Higbee had quite a few catches, but they were limiting the amount of yards that they were allowing the Rams to get, which I was very impressed. And I have a higher hope for the 49ers now that I saw that performance, because that was their toughest test to date. That was one of the things that I was kind of worried about, was that they haven't played any real competition yet. So that was kind of their game to prove that they are for real. And I think as of right now, I think that they have to be the favorites to win the NFC West, 100%.
Right now, if you were to have the Eagles play the 49ers, Who would you take in that game?
That is a tough one because I think the Eagles. I think I have to take the Eagles because of the fact that the Eagles offense is much, much more explosive than the 49ers offense. And the Eagles defense obviously is performing. I think their biggest struggle that the Eagles have is that they struggle with tackling a lot of the times. Like they have a good defense, but when it comes to players in the open field, it seems like it takes one or two guys to make the tackle, or I mean, two or three guys to make the tackle sometimes, depending on who's running the ball. But I believe that if the game was going to happen next week, the Eagles would be favored 100% because of the fact that what the Eagles have scored 115 points this season, the 49ers have scored 71, which the Eagles have played. I mean, the 49ers have played the Bears, the Seahawks, the Broncos, and the Rams. So essentially, out of those teams, the Broncos probably have the best defense as of right now, and the 49ers scored 11 points. So I think that's kind of that kind of proves that when the 49ers play a team that's defensively sound, like the Eagles would be, I think that the Eagles would have the edge, and I would expect them to be favored. But looking at the Eagles' schedule, like they've played some decent teams, like the Jaguars and the Vikings are probably the best two teams. I mean, the Lions put on a almost won against the Eagles week 1, but that was week 1, so we didn't really know what to expect from the Eagles. But the comeback win versus the Jaguars last week kind of proved that the Eagles are for real. When I first saw them go down, I think they were down 14, 10-0 in the beginning this week.
They had 2 early turnovers. They had 2 early turnovers that really hurt them.
Yeah, and I think that proves that they can be resilient in times of need, which they didn't freak out. Like you could tell that they still had their heads on their shoulder, and they came back and figured out how to come back. And I mean, the score shows that it was close, but at the end, it was kind of obvious that the Eagles were running away with it. So.
I think my take on it is I think that if they were to play next week, I would probably take the Eagles as well. I think if these two teams meet in the playoffs and they keep playing along the same lines that they are right now, I would probably take the 49ers in the playoffs. Just because I think I would trust that experience that they have a little bit more. I would trust Kyle Shanahan a little bit more. I also worry that the Eagles' schedule is too easy, and they might get challenged here or there, but they're not going to have the same competition I think that the 49ers are going to have going through the West and with their remaining schedule, and I think that they're going to be more battle-tested going into the playoffs. So I think the Eagles are the third best team in the NFL, ranking week to week. I think that the Bills and the Chiefs...
I was going to say, yeah. That makes sense, Bills and the Chiefs, yeah.
Give me the Bills and the Chiefs over. I think those teams are too proven, and they look a lot better. Jalen Hurts is playing out of his mind, but I take Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes over those two, I think. But I do think the Eagles are playing really well if they keep it up. I think they're going to be in a conference championship type level team. But I think the 49ers are going to be a tough matchup for them, not necessarily now, but later in the season.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the sound of that for sure. And it's kind of, I was looking at into Pro Football Focus's website, and it says that they actually have the Eagles having played an easier strength of schedule than the 49ers so far. I think
the Eagles are supposed to be favored on every single game on the way out. It's that easy.
Oh, really? I mean, that's crazy to me. But yeah, that makes sense though. So it says that the 49ers have the number 1 ranked defense, power rank, and the Eagles have the 5th, I think it said. The 5th ranked defense, yeah. But the Eagles have the 30th strength of schedule, and the 49ers have the 28th, I think I said. Which, I mean, that makes sense. Having played.
Here's their next 5. Here's the next 5 games for the Eagles. At Arizona this weekend, which they're favored by 5. Then they play against the Cowboys at home, against the Steelers at home, against the Texans in Houston, and then against the Washington Commanders at home. They can go 5-0.
The toughest game they have remaining is the Packers.
unless one of these teams
Bears, step up and start playing better.
They're going to finish the season a ridiculously high record, and I think they're going to be inflated going into the playoffs.
I mean, I like the sound of that for sure. And I think it says that the early line for the Cowboys is them favored by 5.5. But okay, I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you said. I think that that's pretty spot on. The Eagles are a good team, and they've showed they're a great team, but when they start playing real competition, which it's kind of sad to say, but the NFC doesn't have that many really sound teams other than like those two. Maybe the Packers
Buccaneers.
I mean, if the Buccaneers, they haven't figured it out though. I feel like they don't look as good as they normally do, which I know it's injury based, but still, like they don't have that oomph that they usually do. And I think that, well, I mean, they'll obviously figure it out because it's Tom Brady. But I think that as of now, I don't really see many teams that could knock them out other than maybe the Packers, the 49ers, and the Buccaneers. Other than that, I don't think anyone else is really a true threat.
I mean, the Giants are frauds. I think the Cowboys are frauds. I love the Cooper Rush story, but they're not a 3-1 team. I think comparative to the rest of the teams. I think
What's
the Vikings are a
Cooper Rush is 4-0.
4-0.
4-0 as a starter.
But the teams that they've played have been absolutely no one across that time period. I mean, you beat the Bengals by 3, you beat the Giants by 7, and you beat the Commanders by 15. I wouldn't put those as necessarily tough tests. They go into LA this week to play the Rams, and I think the Rams are going to have their way. I think the Rams are just kind of in, like I said, in that kind of still trying to figure things out mode. I think that they're a better football team than the Cowboys, in my opinion.
I would agree. Where is it? The Cowboys. Okay. No, yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, they haven't really put up that many points this season, the Cowboys, at all. So, what? They've scored 71 points and allowed 62, so not really that much in terms of scoring differential. And the Rams have, where the hell are the Rams? There they are. The Rams have allowed more points than they've scored, so that's also not a good look, but way more points, like 24 more points, which is quite a bit.
But I think
all these blowout losses.
Yeah, but Matt Stafford is not look good. 4 touchdowns and 6 interceptions this year. I mean, you have to think that he's going to figure it out and not have a higher.
Well, was last year his first year?
TD. Yes.
And maybe last year was fluke. What if it was just a fluke shit and they actually suck?
Are they that different? Besides you lose Andrew Whitworth at left tackle, who you've had for
they lost
forever.
Odell, dude, the number one guy. No, I'm kidding.
You still have the guy that caught 147 passes last year.
Oh,
and he's on pace to
MVP that team.
He's on pace to do something close to it again. He's averaging 10 receptions a game at the moment.
Well, when him and Higbee are the only receivers, it's kind of an issue. And them having a non-existent run game is also a big issue.
I think that's a big issue. I think Cam Akers is a big issue.
Well, no, I think he looks better than freaking Henderson. Like last week was the first week that they started actually giving Cam Akers like a lot of carries, and I feel like he actually looks better than Henderson in terms of like running downhill and like trying to get more than 2 yards. Like I don't know what the deal is, but like what? So like the Rams have it makes sense. I mean, they allow a lot of pressure on Stafford, which is causing issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have They have the worst ranked pass blocking in the NFL. That's
well, we saw it against the 49ers when they were coming down the stretch. You know, when they were driving with a chance to cut the lead, Stafford gets sacked twice. They punt, and then Stafford throws that pick six because he had pressure in his face again on Monday night. That's going to be a problem long term.
Most definitely. Okay, so we kind of talked about storylines and like last week in general.
Yeah, I want other thing.
I was going to say let's keep going and let's try to wrap it up and let's talk about some bigger storylines that we haven't brought up yet, and then we can go into injuries and then go into next week.
Well, let me ask you this. I want to ask you a question. Who do you think has more wins at the end of the season? Kind of staying on the Cowboys, the Cardinals, the Cowboys, or the Broncos? Who do you think has more wins at the end of the season?
The Cardinals, the Cowboys, or the Broncos? I think the answer would be, and you're gonna hate this answer. You're gonna hate it so much. It's either
if you say Arizona.
No, it's not gonna be Arizona. I was going to say it's either going to be the Cowboys or the Broncos. It's not going to be Arizona. I think it's going to be the Broncos out of all three of those.
It's a tough division, but I think that they're going to be able to get the. I think losing to the Raiders was bad. I don't think the Raiders. I think the Raiders might be the worst team in that division at the moment with Josh McDaniels there. I think the
But
Chargers are better.
that's what's crazy though is I feel like the Raiders have so much talent on their roster. It's like, what the hell are you guys doing?
It's crazy.
I mean, every
It's
team
crazy.
in the AFC West has talent on their roster, but it's just like, I don't know. Like their offense should be. Darren Waller is a baller. I don't know what his deal is.
He's
They're not
getting
feeding the ball
nothing.
enough. Exactly. He's got this big raise in the offseason, and he has essentially been an average, maybe below than average tight end this year. Which
Yeah,
maybe
I would-
defenses are suggesting for that. But you would think with getting Devontae Adams that would one of the two would be open all the time. Which I know Devontae Adams is getting a lot of looks, but it's not like he looks like Cooper Kupp out there.
I would agree, which I think he should. And I think they're getting. I think Devontae Adams has some. He has 47 targets on the year, 26 receptions, which isn't bad. But I think having Darren Waller only having 24 targets this year. I mean, you can't have Mac Hollins be your second most targeted person on the field when you have Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, and Darren Waller out there as weapons.
Yeah.
I would expect more from Josh McDaniels. He did this in Denver, where he kind of fell apart and then became an offensive coordinator again. I'm curious if we're seeing it again in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think the Raiders are going to have some issues this year. Now that I look at the remaining, like if they start getting things going, which they can, they play the Texans, the Saints, the Jags, which will be a tough game, the Colts, the Broncos, the Seahawks. But then the last like 6 games of the year, Chargers, Rams, Patriots, Steelers, 49ers, Chiefs. So like they could lose like 4 or 5 of the last 6, which in my opinion they could easily.
Yeah.
So that is a tough look for the Raiders. But we were talking about the Broncos, and I think that Russell Wilson had not his best performance in terms of yards, but his best performance in terms of like passer rating and how he looked throwing the ball, accuracy, that kind of thing last week versus the who was it? The
Raiders.
Titans.
They put
Raiders. What am I saying? Yeah, Raiders.
Yeah,
Sorry.
against Raiders.
Yeah, Raiders. Yeah. And I think that he's shown that. And I think that this week they bounce back versus the Colts, which we'll talk about later. They play the Colts Thursday night. And I believe that the Broncos show a little bit more. I think they're gonna turn out to be a little bit better than what they've shown the first few games. So
do you worry with Javonte tearing the ACL? Do you worry about that with them?
No, because I think Melvin Gordon can be a one-man workhorse. I think
so
he can.
too.
I don't know why I mean, I understand why teams do this two-headed monster running back thing, especially with a big guy like Melvin Gordon who can run downhill. But I think that Melvin Gordon getting the majority of carries, I think it might actually open up more for their passing game. And one of the things that I was looking into, which kind of confuses me, is like the Broncos use like 4 tight ends. And they kind of hint towards what kind of play they're going to be running based on what tight ends in. Because if you look at the pass percentage, or like the pass versus run percentage with some of their tight ends literally only go in for like 90% of the time for pass. So it's like when they're in there, they're going to throw the ball. Which I mean, like maybe if it's third down and long, like it's obvious. But I think that they need to mix that up to the point where bring them in on early downs and kind of mess the defense up. Because I mean, if I was a defensive coordinator, I would see that and like obviously plan for that, which I mean they're obviously doing. But I think that being so predictable is an issue with a lot of offensive coordinators, not just in the NFL. But you would think in the NFL that coordinators would practice against their own tendencies, which I know a lot of teams do, is kind of hire someone to scout against them, be like, okay, well, you're gonna run this play on this down and distance, that type of thing.
I think for me it's crazy
because I wanted to take a tight end player prop because of the way that the Titans let up so many yards versus opposing tight ends. But it's hard for me to isolate one tight end because one of the guys gets way more looks, but it's like he has only 8 targets for 20 yards, and it's like, what the hell? How do you only have like 15 combined receptions for your tight ends? Yeah. But I think that was an issue with Russell Wilson in Seattle too. I feel like he didn't target his tight ends, but I could be wrong about that.
I mean, think of Jimmy Graham there. Went from the Saints, a high-powered offense, went there and kind of struggled. And you really can't name a tight end that Seattle ever really focused on outside of that. I think it goes back to Nathaniel Hackett. I think that I'm not pressing the panic button as a Denver Broncos fan, but I'm getting pretty close just with the way that, like you said, some of the tips that they're giving off, the poor game management decisions. I'm getting close early on to hitting a panic button as a Denver Broncos fan.
Wait, where did he come from?
He was the Green Bay offensive coordinator. He was Aaron Rodgers, so that's why when Aaron Rodgers was getting all rumored to Denver, it was because Nathaniel Hackett just went to Denver and he was going to follow him along.
But this is his first head coaching job, obviously.
Correct. Yeah.
Or he's acting like it is, at least.
He's definitely acting like it is.
During Aaron Rodgers' psychedelic phase, he decided to potentially leave the old Wisconsin.
Speaking of weird coaching decisions, what did you think of John Harbaugh not kicking the field goal and trying to go for the touchdown to beat the Bills?
I was quite confused, but I think it's because of the fact that he's scared of Josh Allen, which makes sense. I mean, there's 4 minutes left, so he was thinking maybe if we don't score, then we could stop him. But essentially, that's kind of contradicting. So here, give me 1 sec. I'm gonna play this clip. I actually have it. I saved it so that people can see if they didn't check out the game.
You got to give Lamar Jackson a chance to get on the move and give him options here.
Mike Davis is in. Ravens go for it on 4th and goal. Jackson fading. Jackson throws. Intercepted. The Bills have it. Jordan Poyer with the pick.
You just can't.
Baltimore decides not to kick the field goal. And
I think that thing was blocking the time the entire time, but now you guys can see that there was 4 minutes left.
Kick the field goal.
I think
kick the field goal. Take the points.
Unreal decision. Unreal. Okay, we'll end that. But yeah, it's quite crazy, and I think thinking in terms of what Harbaugh was thinking was what they had 2 timeouts left with 4 minutes. It was a tie game. Maybe they just thought that they didn't expect the Bills to go all the way down the field. I'm not sure.
I would expect the Bills to go down the field every single time.
Well, I would too. We saw what happened last year with the KC Bills game and how both teams scored 3 touchdowns in half a minute. So they didn't expect them to drive 98 yards, whatever it was. Which I wouldn't expect it to happen, but it's definitely a high possibility with Josh Allen in that offense. And they showed them that in the beginning of the second half and the end of the second quarter, they essentially couldn't stop the Bills, and penalties were killing the Ravens, absolutely killing them. But yeah, that was a tough play call to watch, and I actually loved it because I picked the Bills in my Survivor League, and the first half of the first quarter, I was literally pissing my pants. I was like, no way this is happening.
I bet everyone in their Survivor Leagues that picked either the Bills or the Packers were on the edge of their seats nonstop for the first 4 hours.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because I was in a Survivor League with 98 people. $25 buy-in a person, so it's almost $2,000. Or it's over $2,000. Maybe it was $20 buy-in, I don't remember. But there was 9 people left out of 98, and it's week 4. That's how many people got eliminated in the first 4 weeks, which is understandable because you don't really know what's going to happen in the first 2 weeks. But 7 of the 9 had the Packers. And I was so down for the Packers to lose because then it would have been a one-on-one with me and some other guy for the win this week. Or, it could just keep going on. You never know.
Yeah.
But I was so upset when I saw that they won in overtime because I actually wasn't watching that game. And I was like, okay, well, and I didn't even know that 7 of the 9 people had the Packers until Monday. My friend texted me. He's one of the guys that hooked me up with this Survivor League. And he's like, dude, did you see what happened in the Packers game? I'm like, yeah, what's the big deal? And he's like, 7 of us had them for Survivor League. I'm like, oh my God. Why couldn't the Patriots
does a tie kick you out?
Yeah, I think
do you
that tie
lose a
takes you out,
tie?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, some don't, but I mean, you're picking who's going to survive, and I mean, a tie is not really like when you bet on soccer and you bet a money line and they tie, like you lose your bet. So, essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
So I guess it's called a draw in soccer. Sorry, fellas. But yeah, no, it was electric. And we also had the first London game, which was huge.
The double doink.
The double doink, and the Vikings pull it off, which they actually looked like they should have won easily. I don't know why it got so close, but
I will say
big shout out, overrated.
Shout out Andy Dalton. I mean, for stepping in short notice. Him when your backfield is you and Latavius Murray, and you're playing, I think, a really good Minnesota offense, and you keep it, and you have a shot to win the game. When you have a shot to win the game, that I commend him. He put in a good effort. He definitely earned holding the clipboard for a couple more years with that.
I agree. As long as they don't get any more primetime games, I think the Vikings might win the Super Bowl, which is impossible. So
that is true.
I mean, technically that is a primetime game, right? Because it's early morning. The only game on, is that considered a primetime game? Because it's technically primetime in London, I would think. So, I mean, that technically is a primetime game, if you ask me. So maybe he broke the curse.
We get another one this week. We get Giants Packers in London. So
exactly, it's a huge one. Okay, so then do you want to go into next week's matchups, and we could talk about who got hurt in week 4 while we're talking about this week's matchups?
Yeah, we could jump into next week's matchups.
Okay, cool. So this week's matchups, there are quite a few decent games. I would not say there are any like stellar games. I think it's very mid-tier, middle of the pack type.
I think it's tough because the close games are not really the best teams. If you're looking at spreads inside 3.5, you're watching Saints Seahawks, you're watching Chargers Browns. You don't really have like any of these big matchups till Chiefs Raiders, and still then you have a 7-point spread.
And that's Monday night,
it's
right?
an average week. It's an average week. It has a chance to be good though. The NFL, a lot of parity. You never know what can happen.
Well, there's definitely going to be some shockers, because a lot of people look at this slate and are like, okay, well, that's an obvious win. That's an obvious win. Check, check, check. Buffalo, Minnesota, New York, New England. No idea who's going to win that fucking game. like little things like that. It's like Green Bay over the Giants. Like it seems very easy, but I promise you, it's not going to be what people expect.
We might be gearing up for a nightmare this week. I know. I think I saw a quote from the C-level person at DraftKings that said that they got hammered this week. The public definitely won, so I think the bookies are going to be out for some blood this week in a average NFL slate.
I was thinking the same thing. Maybe it's a week that we take all dogs and all unders, the most ugly thing you could possibly do. Or it might be all dogs and all overs, depending on who the dogs are. It's like, oh, well, they scored the least amount of points in the NFL. Oh, okay. Them and the over. Like, I don't know what it's going to be like. But yeah, no, I agree. They're coming back for vengeance. And you could tell with some of these lines, they are kind of unruly.
Well, let's start with the Thursday night game.
I don't know if that's a British word, but I was trying to make that kind of like a British accent. But
well, let's start with the game tomorrow. We have Colts Broncos. Broncos 3.5-point favorites. Over under 42. I know that you got this in your slate, and you love some lines in here. So let's hear what you got.
Well, so I released like a little write-up on my owner's box write-up Wednesday. And I locked in these plays on my Action Network and on Black Book Sports on Tuesday evening, I believe it was. So if any of you guys follow me on there, you would have saw these before the public. But the plays that I really like, which this is so contradictory of what is happening with the line with the total, but I think that the play. So my favorite play is the Broncos. Locked them in at -3. I didn't even know Jonathan Taylor was questionable. That's how bad of a job I did researching the Colts offense was. But the thing that really stood out to me was their offensive line. So last year, the Colts were the number 1 or number 2 overall ranked offense in terms of running the ball and offensive run blocking. And this year, when you look at their offensive lines grade via Pro Football Focus, they are one of the worst. I think it was bottom 3 in the league in terms of run blocking and in terms of pocket protection. They've already allowed 15 sacks, and I think the offense has fumbled 4 times, 5 interceptions. I think the Broncos defense hasn't really been eating as much as we've normally seen in years past. And I think this is one of those games, with it being a primetime game at home, that the Broncos defense comes out and puts on a wrecking. So that's the reason why I'm taking the Broncos -3, as well as that the best portion of the Colts defense is their run defense. And with the Broncos losing Williams, I think that it'll be kind of easy for the Colts to focus in on the run for a single guy like Melvin Gordon. And with Russell Wilson having his best performance in terms of passer rating last week, I think he's on the way up. I think that he's finally becoming settled within this offense. And I believe that they are going to throw the ball quite a bit because of the fact that the Colts secondary is the weakest portion of their defense. So that's why I was mentioning earlier that I was looking into tight end props, because if you look into the Colts' last few games, the tight ends on opposing teams have actually been putting up quite a bit of receptions. But I can't do that because of the fact that the Broncos play like 4 different tight ends every week. So the 3 plays I locked in, I'm taking the first half over. And this is something that I didn't mention yet, the reason why. But when you look into all of these games for both of these teams, majority of their points are scored in the first half, as well as the majority of points that their defense has let up. And then they're both big second half adjustment teams in terms of their defense. They allow majority of their points in the first half, and in the second half, the amount of points they allow literally cuts in by 75%. So that's why I think it's going to be a like with the total dropping, I think the first half goes over and then the full game goes under, which is kind of a bold prediction, but I think that's what is going to happen. And that's one of the things that we actually see happening a lot. It's in the first half, it's fast scoring, and then it slows down big time. But I also like Russell Wilson over 1.5 touchdowns because of the fact that their running game might be limited with only having 1 running back, and with the Colts having a better rush defense than pass defense. So the 3 were Broncos -3, first half over 20.5 or 21, whatever you can get that.
20.5.
And then the third being Russell Wilson over 1.5 touchdowns, which was around, I think it was +125 when I blocked it in last night. So those are the 3 that I like.
I also like the Broncos in this spot. I agree with everything you said. I think the one thing, I actually have a ticket at 3.5. I'm not as big of a sharp as you are, Dill, on these half-point hooks. I think the big thing here to remember is this is in Denver. They tend to be a pretty good home team. They're 2-0 at home this year. Their 2 losses are both away. I think it's a good spot for him, and I think it's a good spot, especially in a quote-unquote primetime game where Russell Wilson loves to show off and be a character out on the field. I think this is a spot that he can come in and he'll want to put up some numbers. Like you said, the thing people forget, especially with this kind of downturn of Russell Wilson for the last 4 games, they have some good receivers. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, plus the 4 tight ends. They have weapons that they can work off of there. I think their offensive line is good. Their defense is playing really well this year, in my opinion. You know, those only giving up 17 to Seattle is looking better and better every week, especially after they put 48 on the Lions, and being able to hold, the 49ers to 10, the Houston Texans to 9. Yeah, maybe last week was a little bit of an anomaly. I think it really comes down to the Broncos playing at home. I think they're the better team. I think Jonathan Taylor being hurt is going to be a big factor as well. So I fully agree. I don't have that as an official play, but I do like -3.5, and I will be having it as a play on my card.
No, I think it's a good look, and I like how you mentioned the fact that they play better at home. And I think that's huge, especially in a primetime night game. I think that, is it still called Invesco Field, or what is it called now?
Mile High. Well,
it's always been Mile High.
What is it?
I forget the name. It used to be Invesco, but I think that was like the last time I went. Which was,
Empower Field.
So it was Invesco when like LaDainian Tomlinson was on the Chargers. So that's
and it was like Sports Authority.
Yeah, that's how out of date I am with that. But no, I think that's a good look too, because if you look at the Colts running game, their backups have 10 rushes combined.
I think it's
so
like
far.
you said, it's a feast for the defense. It'll be a feast for the defense.
Yeah. And like I think that the offensive line is going to be struggling tomorrow versus this Bronco defense. So, and you make a good point. I said that the Broncos defense is all right, but they're actually, in terms of what they're holding teams to, they're giving up around 300 yards a game, I think it was last time I looked, which is like not horrible, but it's like kind of that bend but don't break defense, which we're seeing the NFL go to quite a bit nowadays. It's just don't let up the big plays. They can have a first down or two, just hold them to a field goal or hold them after a first down or two, which is essentially the defense that we see being promoted everywhere. It's they don't want to play super uptight because that's when you get burnt over the top. So no, I definitely like the Broncos tomorrow, and I think with them losing to the Raiders, it might be one of those things where people are like, "Do they just lost to the Raiders?" But I also think that the Raiders had their back against the wall, being the only team that's winless, or wait, what's the term? Because there was the Texans are technically winless, but they have a tie, so I'm not sure what the hell that means. But
still winless.
But yeah, you know what I mean. So they were considered one of the worst teams in the league, and I don't think they're the worst, even close to the worst team in the league. But their record says otherwise. So, or said otherwise, I guess.
One thing also to look at this, according to Action Network, 80% of the bets on the under, 91% of the money on the under. I don't have a play on the total either way. Just something to keep an eye out. Thinking of maybe a murderer's row for the books this week. Could be something that you keep an eye on.
That makes me love my first half over bet even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at VSiN, and it says that 76% of the handle is on the under 42. 71% of the bets. So yeah, it's still pretty high up there. But yeah, and it looks like sharp money is on the Raiders, the Broncos -3. It looks like around 50% is on the Colts for bets, but 68% of the handle is on the Broncos. So that's a good look. No, I think that this is great, and I'm glad that I even texted the group chat this morning. I was like, hey, lock in Broncos -3 before they call out Jonathan Taylor, which I think that they actually had that kind of already a part of the line because it should have moved a lot more, in my opinion. I think they expected him not to play.
Yeah, and I don't think he's not officially out. Correct? He's not officially out.
On the fantasy app, it says he's out on the ESPN fantasy app, so I'm not sure, but I would think so.
I mean, I doubt he'd play anyway with an ankle sprain off 4 days rest. Yeah,
that doesn't sound fun. But let's move into another matchup we like. What's another one that you don't? We're not going into plays yet, but what's some games that we like this week that kind of stick out to us?
I think an exciting game is the Sunday night game. You have the Cincinnati Bengals playing the Baltimore Ravens. Both teams 2-2. You have an intra-division game in Baltimore in prime time. I think that you have a kind of struggling Cincinnati offense, still trying to figure out their offensive line issues. You have a Baltimore Ravens team that, Lamar is playing unreal right now. And they, in my opinion, probably should be either 3-1 or 4-0 with a tough loss at Miami by 4 and a tough loss to Buffalo by 3. I think it's going to be exciting to see how these teams match up against each other. My initial thought when looking at this is I'm probably going to take the Ravens at home just because of the way it is. But then I go back to thinking, man,
just the way it is. Yeah,
the Bengals were in the Super Bowl last year. We can't discount that fact, and they got some weapons around there. And if there's one part that I think that the Ravens have been really struggling at, it's getting beat by really, really good receivers. So it's definitely a game that I'm going to keep my eye on Saturday night.
It's very true. Very true. Well, because I think going into last week, the Ravens had the worst defense in terms of yards given up in the NFL, which they might still because the Bills always put up a lot of yards on offense. But being able to hold the Bills to 23 points is pretty huge. It's kind of showing that they're taking a step in the right direction, and they actually showed this in week 2, or not week 2, the second half of the game versus the Patriots. They looked horrendous to start that game, but then in the second half they caused 4 turnovers and they essentially shut down the New England offense in the second half of that game, which it honestly was probably the turning point because they got embarrassed versus the Dolphins. Well, not embarrassed, but it was an embarrassing loss with them winning essentially the entire game and then losing the last 30 seconds of the game or whatever it was. But that one was also kind of like an anomaly because the Dolphins and the Ravens were ranked first and second to last in terms of yards allowed on defense. So I think that was just like a shootout type game, and you kind of play the pace of play or the type of game that your opponent is setting. And that's one of the things that we saw with the Bills too, when the Bills played who'd they play where it was like kind of a similar game. Oh my god, I'm blanking out. I need to pull it up really quick. My bad. But when they played the Dolphins, so like the Dolphins and the Ravens, they were both low-scoring games, which is surprising because you'd think versus the Dolphins it would be a high-scoring game because the Dolphins put up 31, or no, the Bills put 31 up on the Rams, 41 versus the Titans, and they lose to the Dolphins, and then they win against the Ravens by 3. So it's like, is the Bills offense struggling, or are they, when they play decent teams, they're kind of just flat? I'm not sure. But
I think this is one of those games that could go kind of either way. I'm looking here on Action Network. You have the Bengals team total set at over 23 points. Is it just me, or does that seem a little bit low against a Baltimore defense?
I mean, it does seem low, but the Bengals only scored 27 against the Jets, 20 against the Steelers, 17 against the Dallas Cowboys. Like the most they scored is 27, and that was against bad defenses, the Dolphin defense and the Jets defense. So I'm not sure if they think the Ravens defense has turned a corner, or with it being a divisional matchup, it might be like what we saw with the Pittsburgh Bengals game, where it was like ugly as hell and they won in overtime. Mm-hmm. I honestly think I like the Ravens in this one, but because of the offense, and I don't know, we'll see, because the Bengals definitely have a better defense, but I don't know if they can essentially slow down Lamar, because as we saw in the first half, the Bills couldn't slow down Lamar, and they have like the number 1 defense in the league. So
we do have a shot for the best 2 games this weekend to be the primetime games, with Bengals, Ravens, and Raiders, Chiefs. I think both those 2 games could easily just be the saving grace for the scoreboard.
I would agree, which is kind of rough because, I mean, obviously I'm going to watch football on Sunday. Like, who's not going to watch football? But I think I would have to agree with those being the best 2 games. Another one that I find quite intriguing is the Eagles at Cardinals, which it's not intriguing in terms of the matchup because the Cardinals had looked less than stellar. But I think that the Cardinals offense looked good last week, and yes, it was against the team that you hate the most. Not hate, but think they're the worst, which I would have to agree, the Carolina Panthers. But I think that when teams have that sort of performance where they're able to score points, which I think they scored the most points. Oh, wait, no, that's not true. They scored the most points against the Raiders, but being able to score 26 points against a Carolina team, I think it gives them confidence coming into this week and kind of have that chip on their shoulder. And with the spread being only 5, it's kind of 5.5, whatever it's at, kind of questionable.
Let's go back and forth.
I would, like, you know what I mean? Because I feel like, in my opinion, the Jaguars are a better team than the Cardinals as of right now. And
I don't disagree.
Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of a weird, like, I don't really believe in like full trap lines, but with the spread being that low, like, I guess it's an away game. But you know, it's like, is this the week that the Eagles kind of fall flat? It could be. I don't know. So
they haven't looked at so far.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the matchup predictor works on ESPN, but it literally says that the Cardinals have a 50% chance of winning.
If there's anything I don't believe is ESPN matchup predictor.
Well, neither do I, but I was just looking at I was looking at this and it's like, wait, what is this? Is this glitching? Like, there's no way this is accurate.
I put that in the same like realm as like the ESPN like win percentage thing that goes where it's like, oh, this team had a 99.9% chance to win, then it goes straight to the other side because some team scores 2 touchdowns in a row.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's all just numbers.
Well, it says it's according to ESPN's Football Power Index. So is that like their power rankings? Yeah, I don't believe in that shit. So yeah, I wouldn't trust the matchup predictor on ESPN. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think the Cardinals are overrated, in my opinion. I think they're overrated.
Well, they're not rated at all. What do you mean? I feel like everyone hates them.
Like,
Everyone thinks they suck.
I think when I looked at the or the NFL power rankings, they had them at 17, 18-ish. And I think this is a bottom third team. Put them in the 20 to 30 range. I don't believe in that offense. I don't believe in Kyle or Murray. I don't think that they're built around that defense. But then again, I look at this.
But yeah,
I look at this and I see 5 points, and I would immediately think in my head, square bet. Let's take the Eagles when maybe the Cardinals play it close at home.
Yeah, like I wanna think sharp in terms of this game because when you actually I'm looking at VSiN right now for the money report in terms of where the money is lying on this game. It says that 77% of the bets are on Eagles money line, but only 50% of the money. So it's 50-50 in terms of money on money line, not the spread.
Mm-hmm. I also have on the
23% of the money line.
I have the spread too. I have 75% of the money on the spread is on the Eagles. So,
but so that's bet percentage or money percentage?
Bet percentage is 50-50. Money percentage is 75% of the money is on the Eagles. And that
we're way off. We're way off.
That almost makes me want to take the Cardinals according to action.
Yeah, because VSiN is saying sharp money's on the Cardinals. So,
but was that for the money? Was that for the money line or the spread?
Both. Sharp money on both for the Cardinals.
Okay.
But and also the sharp money's on the under, which makes no fucking sense. So I think this is intriguing, and the reason why I brought it up is mostly because of the splits with where the money is lying on this game, because the Eagles have been receiving probably the most hype out of any team so far this year, in my opinion, because of how they've kind of looked untouchable at times. And the first week they could have lost, but I think this is when you look to fade teams like this, because when the storyline is all about them and they're playing a team where it's like, this team fucking sucks, then that's when Vegas bites you. So Cardinals could be the play, and it honestly I hate saying that, but honestly it could be.
That is hold your nose and put the bet in. Hold your nose and put the bet in.
Yeah, put it in and forget that it ever happened, and then check on Monday and be like, wow, I won some money. But if I was to take any, I guess we're not talking about plays, but if I was going to take any plays in this game and I didn't care about being sharp or anything, I would take Hurts passing props as well as Eagles receiving props, because of the fact that the Cardinals secondary gets torn up. They have the worst graded secondary in all of football based on Pro Football Focus, which, I mean, I love them. Pro Football Focus is legit.
I think if you're looking for Jalen Hurts passing yards, you're looking at over 247.5 right now.
Yeah, I'm not touching that. If anything, I'm going to take receiving props probably then. I'll take
AJ Brown over 74.5, Devontae Smith over 53, Dallas Goedert over 40.5.
I honestly I didn't forget, but I feel like I haven't heard AJ Brown's name at all this year. Like, not one bit.
I think he's like the 8th rated wide receiver in PPR leagues in fantasy.
I know, but it's I watch ESPN all the time and NFL Network, and I feel like he's not really talked about much. They don't talk about him.
I think it's just because
one touchdown.
I mean, they've played the Commanders, Jacksonville, and Detroit. I think in a lot of those games they get up a lot, and those, not games that you're going to see on Red Zone because the score's so lopsided, and you just hear plays here and there.
Yeah,
I think he's
I don't have
really
him on my fantasy team. Well, no, he's definitely looking at his stats. He's playing really well. He's playing really well, and I feel like an idiot, but I feel like I just haven't heard his name. Like I don't hear people talking about him that much. But when you look at his stats, he has at least 5 receptions in every game, which is unreal. At least the least amount of yards he's had is 69 yards.
Nice.
But he's only had 1 touchdown, which is maybe why it's like he's not putting up the touchdowns, so you don't see his highlights. Which some games, like I've watched some Eagles games, but not all of them. I think I've only watched actually 1 from start to finish. But that would make sense. Okay, so maybe it's because I have Devontae Smith on my fantasy team, and it's like, dude, what the fuck? Why did I draft this guy? He's had 1 good game, maybe 2. Okay, is there any other games that you really like?
I mean, do you want to talk about Chiefs Raiders Monday night?
Sure. Do you have any plays in that game?
I do not. I do not have any plays in that game. I personally think that this is going to be the best game of the weekend. Mainly because if you were to ask me, I would look at this and say, I mean, I think the Chiefs on paper are probably better than 7 points than the Raiders. Like they're a better team than 7 points, especially if you're talking in Kansas City. 7 seems a little tight for me. And like we talked about earlier, I just don't think that the Raiders, they haven't shown me something that would show me that they're 7-point favorites. But this is screaming, take the Kansas City Chiefs, which might, if I'm looking at a Sunday or a Monday night catch me up or something to look at in that game, I might look Raiders in that game.
A Monday night chase. Monday night chase for all your money on the Chiefs, and they lose outright.
Chiefs money line and lose it all. I also, if I was to also look at something, probably a play I like a little bit more is the over in this game. Mainly not because I think the Chiefs defense is bad. I think they've played really well recently. And I think that, granted they gave up 31 to Tampa Bay, but I think Tampa Bay was chasing a lot of that game and Kansas City was just going to give them a lot of dink and dunk. I think you could see an emulation of that where, the Chiefs just keep scoring because the Raiders don't have anyone on defense, and the Raiders keep having to chase, and they have the targets to chase. And if you're looking at this at 51 points, theoretically, all you need is 24 from the Raiders to get to that total. And I think the Raiders could do that. If I look here, their games they've scored 20, 23, 22, and 32. They've all been in that range. And I think the Chiefs have the opportunity to score 27 on that defense. So a 31-24 game, and you cash. I think that's a reasonable. That's a reasonable.
I don't hate that at all. I don't hate that at all. And when you look into last year's stats, the Chiefs were 4-2 versus divisional opponents against the over, and the Raiders were 4-2 as well. So it's pointing in your favor. Let's see how they performed this year so far. Well, the Raiders definitely went over last week, obviously. And then the Chiefs played the Chargers earlier in the year, and that game went under. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good look with the fact that the Raiders have been giving up points.
The Chiefs Chargers game that also missed by 1.5 points, and they scored 51 points in that game. It's not like that was a 42-point game when on a 52.5 point over. It was close.
Yeah.
And granted,
the Chargers should have walked away with that game too.
That was the game that Herbert hurt himself, right?
Got hurt. Yeah, where he threw that interception on the goal line when essentially if we scored it there, the game would have been over. Yeah. Talk about depressing.
Yeah.
Talk about depressing, Casey.
Sorry, not to remind you.
That would have been a game. That would have been a season changer. I mean, not really. It doesn't really matter. But winning that game would have been huge. Because right now we're a 2-2 team. Everyone thinks we suck, which we've shown signs of sucking. I would agree. But our 2 losses are versus the best team in football, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the second best team in football, the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm okay with it. And the game against the Jaguars, Herbert was essentially playing with a broken rib. So I'm okay with it. And the opposite coordinator even came out and said that he was calling pussy plays, like he was being a baby, because he didn't want to hurt Herbert, and then he realized that was not the right call, and that's why we lost. So, if you're too scared to call plays, don't let Herbert play. That's essentially my opinion on it.
Who's the backup? Who would they play? Chase Daniel?
Dude, the number 1 backup in the league. Chase
He made like
motherfucking Daniels.
He's made like $40 million holding clipboards. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. He's sick. He's super sick. I respect him so much, and I don't even know how good he is at football because I've never seen him play. Maybe in preseason, but that doesn't count. Okay, so do we want to talk about our best plays since we are almost reaching an hour here?
I do. I'm ready to go.
Okay, I am ready for you if you want to kick it off first. We can alternate.
Okay, we'll alternate. So my first play that I'm going to be on this week is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. I have their team total over 20.5. I think I have a ticket at 19. But I think if you were to look at it probably by the time that this posts, it's probably closer to 20.5 or 21. One, you've seen it.
It's at 20.5 right now, or 20?
I think 20.5 is what I saw in action when I looked.
So it's moving in the direction that
Correct.
you wrote, if you already locked it in.
I do, yeah, and I have a little point buffer there. Really, my reasoning is I think the Seattle Seahawks, their offenses looked good. Surprisingly for Geno Smith being there, Tyler Lockett still looks like the normal Tyler Lockett. DK's playing great. Rashad Penny they finally got him going in the backfield. The offense looks really, really good.
Rashad, my boy.
I think the other thing to remember is you have the Saints traveling back from London on this. I actually have a little stat for you, Dylan. Opponent team totals versus teams that just played in London the week before. The team total for the team that they're playing is 4-1 for going over in that. So if the team goes to London, they play a game, they fly back. The team that they play the next week, they hit their team total 4 out of 5 times. And with the Seahawks defense firing, Saints defense traveling back, I think that you're going to see Seattle put up points, and I think they could cover and win this game outright. I think it's not the easiest spot for the Saints. I don't think the Saints are a bad team, but I think you're looking right for a Seattle Seahawks victory and scoring 28 points in this game.
I love the analysis on that. And I think I'm going to have to tail. I need to write this down right now. Actually, I have it written down right here. I'm locking this in after this show. 100%, we're locking it in. We're riding with Casey Loves Money because I also love money. But I like that look with them coming back from London. I think that that's something that gets overlooked. A lot of the times you hear or you see articles or hear people talking about how teams go to London early to get acclimated with the time change out there, which I think a lot of people underestimate coming back because they're essentially coming back Monday. They probably get back late Monday because they're 6 hours ahead from New York or something like that.
Yep.
From the East Coast. So they're essentially getting back Monday morning, Monday afternoon, I would think, depending on when they leave.
I just looked. It's a 10.5-hour flight from London to New Orleans.
Yeah, that's not fun.
That's two United States flights.
So the game starts at 7:30 or 9:30 East Coast time? The London games, 9:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So then that's what? They're 6 hours ahead, I think. That's like 3 or 4 p.m. their time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. So and then are they expected to practice Tuesday? I'm not sure.
Typically, I think you get Tuesday off and you're back Wednesday. But still, I mean, that's a long flight. It's a long flight after playing a game.
Would that be considered the same as playing a Monday night game, even though it's on Sunday?
You put them in the same boat. I think that you can't really – jet lag is a real thing, especially after you take a beating in an NFL game. It's less that I think that the Saints are that much worse of a team or that much better of a team. I just think that it's a tough spot for the Saints to come back, and Seattle kind of going on all notches and playing probably a tired defense after they just lost a tough game to Minnesota.
I like that look a lot. I like it quite a bit. Okay. I will be tailing that one, sir. I like that a lot. Next, and don't call this play biased, my first play that I really like is the Chargers versus Browns over 47.5.
Biased.
And I don't know if this is a square. I don't know if this is a square play. I need to look at the money splits, and then I'll go into the research. So it looks like it is kind of the square play. I haven't looked at action, but it looks like 63% of the bets are on the over, 61% of the money. But I don't give a shit. That's not too big of a split. if you look at the last few games of both of these teams, the Browns were one of the only teams, along with the Falcons, to score over 20 points a game in their first 3 games. So they scored 26 versus the Panthers, which doesn't mean anything. They scored 30 versus the Jets, which also doesn't mean anything. And then they scored 29 versus the Steelers. So I know I said it didn't mean anything, but what I think will happen is we saw the Chargers put up 24 against the Chiefs, 24 or 34 against the Texans, 10 against the Jaguars, but I'm honestly crossing that off the list because I think we had 5 or 6 Pro Bowlers not play that game. 5 or 6 Pro Bowlers, and we had 8 total. So essentially all of our good players didn't play that game. And we saw last week that our offense can put up points. And I think that this is going to be one of those more higher scoring games, especially with the Browns being a very good run team. I think they're the number 1 ranked rushing offense, I think, in football. But in terms of not in terms of yards, but in terms of grades and how well they performed against their competition. But if you look at the Chargers, the weak point of their defense is their run defense and their tackling. So I think if Nick Chubb can get going, I think that he's going to have a big day. So that's another thing I'd possibly look into is Nick Chubb props for rushing yards. But I like the Chargers passing game to go off against the Browns because as we've seen, the Browns have allowed a lot of points and also scored a lot of points in their games. So they allowed the Jets to score 30, the Panthers to score 24. I mean, in my opinion, don't call me biased, the Chargers have better offenses than all those teams that they played. So what I think, Chargers score 30 plus, Browns score 20, 24, 30, 24, around there. But take the over. It's max. And that is my first play that I like. The over in the Chargers versus Browns.
Yeah, I'll go with my second play that I like. I've said this. It was the first statement that I made on the show. The Carolina Panthers are really, really bad. They are so bad. They lost by 10. That game was a 16-point game. They got that late touchdown in the fourth quarter. The 49ers, we can all agree, are on their way up. They're trending up. They're looking good. One bad game in Denver. Jimmy G just has to go out and be a game manager. I don't think the Panthers can stop anything, and I don't think they can score anything. And if you're telling me that I can get the San Francisco 49ers under a touchdown, I'm taking that bet. I don't have any stats to back that up. This is pure off feel and what my eyes have seen. I think the 49ers are better than 6.5 points against the Carolina Panthers. So I will be taking the San Francisco 49ers under the touchdown.
I don't hate it, but the one thing I got to play devil's advocate, which I haven't talked to you about. Do you think that last week was the 49ers Super Bowl? Like, is this a big letdown spot? Is this a huge letdown spot for them? They're like, we just worked the freaking Rams. Let's just go beat the Carolina Panthers by 3 points.
I don't think so because I once again I fall back. The Panthers are that bad. They're the 32nd offense in the league. They're horrible. And like what we were talking about earlier, the 49ers are one of the best defenses of all time, or are pacing that way. So you have these two things of the worst
for the first
equaling the best.
4 games.
For the first 4 games, you have these two things equaling together. Show me how the Carolina Panthers score 10 points up until 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and maybe they get a garbage time touchdown. I just don't see how that's happening. I don't see Baker Mayfield doing it. I fully expect the 49ers to go out and roll.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean,
it's the square bet. It is the squarest bet on my card.
If I was going to take a side, it would be the 49ers, 100%. And I think that that's the look, because if you look at it, the Panthers have played like 3 of the 4 worst defenses in the league. The Cardinals had the worst defense in the league. And the Giants and the Browns. And they didn't really score shit, so.
If I lose this bet,
they scored over 10 points every week, though.
If I lose this bet, I am okay with it because I bet this with all of my brain and I believe it. And even if it doesn't cover, I still know that the 49ers are a better team, and I think I was on the right side, and that's all that matters.
How is this the Panthers' fourth home game? That doesn't make any fucking sense. It's literally the fifth week.
They played their only away games against the Giants, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. How is this their fourth home game? It's the fifth week in the NFL. That's some bullshit. Right? 4 home games in the first 5 weeks. That's kind of crazy.
Camera going out of focus.
It might just be the service. It'll be better.
Whatever.
But I think that is a good look. I mean, I'm not going to fade that, but it's one of those things where
Take
it
the
scares
Panthers.
me.
I dare you. If you're out there and you take the Panthers, you deserve to lose.
I'm not going to take the Panthers, but I'm saying it's one of those things that scare me. Like with Vegas losing so bad, it's like, do they know that the 49ers lose this week or that they don't cover it? I'm not sure. But I'm not going to touch it because I'm not an idiot. So the next one that I like a lot is, we already talked about this, but the Broncos -3. That's Thursday night. Lock it in. It's probably going to be 4 by the time the game starts, I would think. If not, then the Colts are probably the play, and I'm going to be scared. But I went over this earlier, but I think that the Colts' offensive line is absolutely horrendous, and I think that the Broncos' defense has shown that they are some ballers when time needs them to be. So I like them at home because of the fact that it's at home and it's a primetime game. I think that Denver comes out and puts on a performance on offense and defense. I wouldn't be surprised if this game also went over because of how much damn money is on the under. So I am on the first half over. Just an FYI for everyone out there. Broncos -3, first half over, and Russell Wilson over 1.5 passing touchdowns.
I like those.
There it is.
I think the Russell Wilson passing touchdowns is going to be a good play. I think that.
Because everyone's like, it's like one of those weeks where sharps are going to eat. Like the public's not, like the public can't eat 2 weeks in a row, and if it does,
Agreed.
I'm gonna be broke. But I feel like the storyline is Russell Wilson is garbage and blah 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 blah. Which I even tweeted out like 2 weeks ago, and I feel like an idiot. Like he's obviously good, like in terms of how he's been in his career, but this year he's been average. So let's see him step back, and I think he does versus this Colts secondary.
My next play is one, again, kind of out of the heart, but I actually have something to back this up. The Dolphins -3 against the New York Jets. And the reason is I think that the Jets are getting a lot of value because of their win last week. I think we do have to remember that they are the Jets. And I don't think that they're really that great of a team. I think they're maybe a year out with another good draft class. I think the other thing to remember is you would say, yes, Tua is out, and I think that does play a big factor into it because I do think the Dolphins, I think if Tua was playing, I think the spread is closer to like 7 or 8 potentially. I think with Teddy Bridgewater being the backup quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, Dylan, I don't know if you knew this, 41-21 against the spread all time in his career in 62 starts. He is a spread.
His stats last week looked really good. He actually performed really well.
You could make an argument that he was in the perfect spot for him because it's a great backup position to come in. You have great targets to go after. You got a good offensive line. The defense has some problems there. They have some holes that they need to figure out. But this team can go out and score, and I don't think the Jets can go out and keep the score with them. So I think that the Dolphins are going to cover 3. This game will probably get up to 3.5, probably by kickoff. If you can get it at 3, I would get it there. But I don't believe in the Jets. I think the Dolphins are the better team. And I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to go out and does what he does and throw the ball around to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki and score 28 points. Jets score 20 and you get a cover.
I like it. I also am kind of worried that you're betting against Mr. Zach Wilson. Soon to be Giselle and Zach Wilson.
Oh my God! Do you take the Falcons out of principle this week with all that going on?
Do I take what?
The Falcons at +8.5 out of principle.
No, definitely not. Never bet against Tom when he's pissed off. That's what I gotta say. But did you know that the Jets actually have the 4th most passing yards this year in the NFL?
I think isn't that inflated because of Joe Flacco throwing 60 passes week 1?
I couldn't tell you. I didn't dig that far into it. But top 4, Chargers number 1, which is surprising. I didn't even know that. Buffalo number 2, Miami number 3, Jets number 4. Miami and the Jets right there. Kind of crazy.
The Jets threw the ball 60 times against the Ravens week 1 and scored 9 points. Just a heads up there. I think Brees Hall's a great addition.
How many yards passing did they get?
307.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's not a huge because 4 games. Yeah.
Brees Hall is good. I think the Jets have potential in the next couple of years, but this is not their year. Zach Wilson, I don't think is the person. And I would, if you were telling me, if I had the choice between Teddy Bridgewater and Zach Wilson on the Jets, I'd take Teddy Bridgewater. I think he's a better quarterback there. So you're telling me I get to take Teddy Bridgewater plus Tyreek Hill plus Jalen Waddle? I'll take that offense over the Jets every single day.
No, I agree. I mean, I like the Dolphins' defense a lot, or offense a lot. The thing that scares me is their defense because they give up like 300 yards passing a game or something crazy. So 400 or whatever the hell it is. But I don't hate it at all. I don't think I could take the Jets, but it kind of scares me. It's one of those games where it's like, oh, is Vegas going to eat? I'm not sure. Or since 2 is out, is everyone betting the Jets? I don't know how sharp the community is.
I've talked to some sports gamblers in my time, and they're not that sharp. So,
it looks like way more money is on the Dolphins -3. 92% of the money is on Dolphins -3 on VC.
Wow, another bet that I'm okay losing. If the Jets somehow cover, then that's like a whatever it is.
Well, the Jets it says the Jets have 32% of the bets and 8% of the money. So that's kind of a good look, but it's also kind of scary because it's still a lot of fucking money on the Dolphins.
Yeah, give me the Dolphins. Give me the Dolphins right now. And I think that'll change too. I bet that spread goes up a little bit to try and correct a little bit. But I'm going to take the Jets early on.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to. Dolphins, sorry. I mean, the goal is for Vegas to what? They move the odds in order to have around the same even amount of money on both sides. Isn't that kind of their goal?
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, I would expect it to move unless there's actually sharp money incoming on the Jets, but I can't see that anywhere. So, but I honestly don't look into that too hard. I mean, I do in some games where it seems too easy, but that one is it'll be a good little division battle they got going over there. Okay, so my 4th one is the Falcons versus Bucks under 48. And I like this one a lot because of the fact that the Falcons have been putting up points this year. I know they haven't been playing the best teams, but Marcus Mariota at quarterback, he is 10,000 times better than freaking Matt Ryan, in my opinion. I think being mobile is a huge game changer for them. And Drake London, right? Drake London. He has shown some good performances, and I think that the Falcons will be able to put up some points, but not to the point where the over is going to hit. I think it's going to be a closer scoring game, and I honestly could see the Falcons covering, but with it being 48 points, I don't think that the game's going to go over because of the fact that the Tampa Bay defense, their strength is in their secondary, and the strength for the Falcons is in their passing game, I would think. Passing game slot, yeah, definitely passing game. Well, also the ability for Mariota to be mobile, but I think that the Bucs defense is good enough to shut them down, and the Buccaneers haven't looked that impressive. Like, they scored a lot of points against the Chiefs, which we kind of talked about earlier, but I think a lot of it was kind of garbage time. Chiefs were playing bend, don't break because they knew that they were able to score. They didn't really need to shut them down completely. It was just like, let's slow them down because we know that they were essentially leading the entire game. So they pretty much walked away with that game. But I like this game to go under. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa Bay walks away with it, but I would think that the game would still fly under if Tampa Bay, because I could see the Falcons scoring like max 17 points in this game. So I like the under in this one.
I'm trying to pull up. I'm curious.
Which I had my whole analysis written out and I can't find it, so I was kind of rambling on. So if I didn't make
What is
sense, just know I took it.
what is to be completely honest, this maybe goes back to me not believing in the Falcons enough and not watching enough. What does their rush defense look like? Is that it? Are they a good rush defense? Because one of the things that I know is that the Bucks have not ran the ball well whatsoever. They're 31st in the league in yards, and I'm thinking that this maybe could be to help you out. One of those games where if they can establish the run, they'll just control the clock and just try to get Leonard Fournette going and score 24 points and get out of there with a win.
I'm trying to pull it up. I had it up, but I went to the game we were just talking about. 1 sec. Let me go back and let this shit load. They are. I mean, the Falcons' defense isn't great, but they allow around 125 yards rushing a game. So I think that this is one of those things where we could see the Bucks really trying to set up their rushing game for the season going forward, where they try to reestablish that, which is a good look because the running game looked really good against Dallas in Week 1, which we saw the game end 19-3, which is way under. And I think we could see another game like that where they try to reestablish it. And I mean, we don't really have any good games to compare on how this game might go, at least for the Buccaneers. Maybe no, I don't know. But I would say that I like the under in this one because of how high all the Falcons games have gone. It doesn't really make sense for it to be this low with them scoring at least 20 points per game this year. And the Buccaneers essentially having a high-powered offense, which it's been struggling the last few weeks, but it's because of these injuries. It still looks like a lot of their guys are questionable on offense, so we'll see what happens. But I think the under is the play with this one.
I like that
and
pick.
It also is one of those ones that scares the hell out of me because the Buccaneers could score all 48 by themselves. But when you're scared of the play, it usually turns out to be okay because the ones that you think are easy are usually the ones that lose. So,
right. Yep.
And that's why I'm not a big 5-10 unit guy because all those plays that you are super, super confident, oh, this is 100% hitting, putting my salary on it, those are the ones that lose. And you get so devastated and you're like, what went wrong? I had all the reads correct. And that's why staying consistent across your bets is key.
Agreed. Good life advice there, Dill.
Oh yeah, I'm here to give advice.
I'll give you my last pick, and I'm going to give you 2 picks for my last pick because they're both in the same game, and I like both of them equally. This is my lock of the week. I've looked at this a bunch of times. I just don't see how it loses. The Detroit Lions +3 against the New England Patriots in Foxborough, and the over 45.5 points. The Lions scored 45 points by themselves last week. Okay, they have a great offense and no defense. Defense just doesn't want to play. And you have the New England Patriots who got 37 scored on them by the Ravens, and 27 scored on them by the Packers. Their defense is not good. So you get Jared Goff, who's probably going to put up, let's say, 28 points right there. The Lions defense is equally as not good. And Bailey Zappi, he didn't look bad last week. I think he has a chance to go out and perform. And I think he, in that position, is going to go out and take his shot to go maybe make a case for the starting job. And he is going to throw the ball everywhere. They're going to let him fly. He's going to throw some touchdowns and he's going to throw some interceptions. And when you get into that type of game, you're going to get into this back and forth where a lot of points are going to get scored. You're going to get points. And I think that's where the Lions defense can maybe score a defensive touchdown. Maybe keep an eye on that. But you 45.5 points. I think that goes over there. And I think the Lions, their just offense is going to be a lot better than a third-string New England quarterback is going to be. So I see the Lions covering. I see them winning outright. And I see this game going over in a 31-20 game is where I see it ending.
Yeah, he did, Zappi, however you say his last name. He did look decent last week. I mean, he had 15 attempts, 10 completions, 100 yards. Which, I mean, I think that's a good look. And one of the things that I was just looking at, which I didn't even know, was that the Detroit Lions have the most points scored and most points allowed in the NFL, on both sides. So it could be a look. But I think the issue is if the Patriots can score, which is why I like both those plays a lot, actually.
I think you're going to get points from him one way or another. And this 45 seems low to me. I think one of the things that maybe I'm not taking into factor, but everything that I've seen is maybe some weather. I know it's getting colder up in Foxborough. Maybe it's not going to be as pass heavy, but I just see that the Lions are going to go out and score some points against a not great New England defense, and I see a okay New England offense going and scoring some points against a really, really bad Detroit defense.
I like the sound of that. No, I like that a lot because I think a good look is Stevenson on the Patriots this week, because I believe who is it? Williams? Damian Williams, right? Damian Harris. What am I saying? I've got Detroit's running back and the Patriots running back mixed up. But I think he's hurt or he's questionable or something. Last time I looked, let me look. I might be thinking about someone else. Because I think Stevenson is like the second guy. Or it might be the third guy. What is it?
I mean, they have a lot of running backs on that team. They always have, and they have Damian Harris too. So I'm not worried if you have one running back.
That's what I mean. Damian Harris, yeah. Yeah, so I guess, yeah. No, I mean, I like that look a lot. I think that the over is a great look, and same. Oh my God, Madison keeps calling me. I'm recording a show right now, miss. Okay, I'm going to go over my last play, and then we'll close it down, okay? My last play is the Giants versus Packers over 40.5. And the reason why I love this is because most games, except last week, I feel like a lot of London games are super low scoring and boring as hell. At least that's what it was for the first few years, is like, why are these boring ass games in London? And I think when you look at it, this is the first game ever with two teams with winning records, I think that's what the stat was. With both teams having winning records ever. So I think this is, I know that you think the Giants are frauds, which I partially agree, but I believe that their offense will be able to put up yards because of the fact that the Green Bay Packers do allow opposing running backs to gain quite a bit of yards. And obviously that's the strength of the Giants offense, is their running game. And I think that both these teams are going to score regardless because of the fact that the Giants get burnt over the top at least once a game, I would think. And I mean, but if you look at it, like, the Giants haven't really been getting up that many points, but I think this is one of those games where both teams kind of break loose because of the fact that they're both 3-1. It's in London. And I know one of the terms people like saying is defenses travel, offenses don't, but I think this is going to be the complete opposite. I think both running backs are going to have a day, and I believe that this game is going to soar over. 41 is really low, and with the way that both these teams can score, I can see this hitting in the first half. So that's what I like.
My contrarian play is like what we said on defensive traveling back. I think that it's a long flight from Green Bay to London, and I think it could be maybe a slow start for him.
In terms of offense or in terms of defense, or both? Or
in terms of offense, I would worry less about the Packers. I worry a lot about that Giants offense, not because of Saquon, but Daniel Jones is a backup playing there, man. He is not a starting quarterback caliber, starting NFL quarterback caliber. He's not bad, but I don't think that he's ever going to do anything for you. And
Dude,
I think
he has
the Giants,
heart, bro. He has absolute heart.
Yeah, but he can't run, or he trips over himself when he runs. I think Daniel Jones is the only thing that holds me back on this. It's not any part of the Packers, both offense and defense. It's just Daniel Jones, and can they get, what do you need, 17 points? Can they get there? Maybe?
Yes. Okay, I have a question for you. So, Daniel Jones is questionable. If Daniel Jones doesn't play, are you more confident in the over? Or less confident? What if it's Jake Fromm?
Here's what I would. If it's Jake Fromm, your bet's gonna look horrible because the Giants might get shut out.
Unless they get like 20 turnovers and the Green Bay Packers win by 50.
If Daniel Jones doesn't play, I would hate it even more, and I bet that over under drops to somewhere in the 33-36 range. I bet.
Because they're just going to feed Saquon all day if that happens.
Yeah, but then the Giants or the Packers are just going to key on the run, and I think that they're going to stop them.
Well, I know that's what I'm saying, and that would make the total drop because if they're going to run the ball every play, then yeah.
I think you're probably there on the right side. I probably will not touch that game just because I don't know if we have enough data to support any sort of like London theories, and I know I gave that with the Seahawks team total over, but I just don't trust in the Giants enough to score enough points to get there. It's the only thing holding me back.
Okay, now I need to look right now. Give me 1 second. Okay, we're looking at the history of games in London all together. You ready?
Yep, ready.
Okay, so the first game ever was the Giants vs. Dolphins, 23 total points. Second game, Saints Chargers, 37-31. Third game, 35-7. Wait, well, I'm just gonna add them up and tell you how many games went over this total. I know the teams make a huge difference, but 1, 2, 1 sec. So out of what the... Well, I should have added that up. Oh my god. There's been 31 games. Out of the 31 games, I think it was 26 of them went over at least 43 points.
Add it to the card.
Which is a lot. Which is a shitload.
Yeah,
Which I know the teams make a difference because there's some games that are like literally 23 total points. But when like 98% of the games are going over, I feel like it's like how there's juice balls in baseball. It's like they do something to put up points because they want people there to be entertained.
Fair
At
enough.
least I would hope. And I don't know how they rigged the game of football, but we're taking the over.
I won't be adding it to my card deal, but maybe I'll probably put a ticket on it Sunday morning.
If not, it's okay.
9:30 in the morning, so can't wait. Can't wait for 11 hours of straight football on Sunday. Just as a recap on my side, I'm going to be on the Seahawks team total over 20.5, the 49ers minus 6.5, Dolphins minus 3, Lions plus 3, and over 45.5.
That total drop? Wow, that's a little sketch, Casey. Okay, so my 5 plays are tomorrow. I have the Broncos minus 3, 3.5. I'd like both. First half over. Super contrarian, but it's either the first half over or don't touch the total. And Chargers versus Browns over 47.5. The Giants versus Packers over 40.5. And then Falcons versus Bucks under 48. Huge dubs all around. We're going to have these plays, majority of these plays, added to our Black Book account profiles out there, as well as our Action Network accounts. And we will talk to you guys next week to see how our plays turned out and if any of our predictions were somewhat close, which I would estimate a few of them would be. So tune in next week, and thank you for tuning in to the Pigskin Profit Show. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend of football and making that shmoney.